Good late afternoon. It's Joyful Hermit, and a viewer reminded me of the Sacred Heart of Jesus commemoration day or celebration coming up. And it took me back to the first year I was Catholic. Well, actually, it was even before I was confirmed, but that first summer that I was taking private instruction and just in awe of all the celebrations. Every day was something new, uh, another person to celebrate, some holy person, or Jesus or Mary, or different what they call feast days or solemnities. And so the Sacred Heart of Jesus Day came. And right following it then is the Immaculate Heart of Mary celebration. And oh, there's just several, like Trinity Sundays in there. And my grandmother even had this recipe in her recipe box, and I got the recipe with her handwriting. And it was Whit Sunday cake, Whit Sunday, meaning white Sunday for Trinity Sunday. And she was, I think, Church of the Brethren or something like that. But I think I made that cake one time. It's just a white cake, a plain white cake. But they would make it on Trinity Sunday, what the Catholics call Trinity Sunday. And but then I realized that, at least in the Protestantism I grew up in, no longer was that celebrated. These other days weren't really celebrated much. No one was talking about it at home or making a cake or a special cake or anything like that. So I got my excitement of spiritual life and religious aspects, reinvigorated 29 years ago. And then I heard about these things called novenas. And that's what this viewer mentioned in a comment, that he's starting a novena to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Well, I thought most of you know what a novena is, but just in case others don't, I had to learn this 29 years ago. I didn't have to, I wanted to. What's a novena? Because people were talking about praying novenas. Well, it happened sometime, probably in the Middle Ages it started, maybe before, of a prayer of 9 days. You say a prayer for 9 days in advance of something. And usually for a special intention of some sort. And I think it was, they can do novenas using rosary novenas or certain prayers that are written by someone, or your own prayers, or I like to do novenas of other types of offerings. I just go with instinct. I pray and ask God for ideas for what He would like. Because to me, prayer doesn't have to be a set of words or certain words. Prayer is my loving, communicative relationship with God. Prayer is my love relationship with God. That's how I relate with God, is through prayer. And it comes down to love. How I love God is the prayer, and the loving of God is the prayer. So, and how God and I relate with one another is the prayer. So I'd forgotten about, I'd thought about it the other day that, it's coming into June, and the Sacred Heart of Jesus is usually early June. Well, I looked it up, and it's going to be a week from Friday on June 7th. That's the Sacred Heart of Jesus Day, to celebrate His Sacred Heart, to commemorate it, to honor His Sacred Heart. So, and this man a viewer was going to do a novena. I think he said he was starting today. Not sure if it's today, but anyway, if we start today, the 9 days will be up the day before the Sacred Heart. I think that's how it's supposed to be. It probably doesn't matter to Jesus. But, if we're going to do 9, we can either start today and be done and have Sacred Heart of Jesus Day be there and not be doing our prayer on that day. Celebrate on that day. Well, of course, prayer can be celebration. That's what my loving relationship with God is. It's a celebration. Always my love of God. And the celebration can be sorrowful or can be joyful. But it's always my relationship with God is prayer. My love relationship with God and Him with me. It's back and forth. It's intermingled. It's a union of love of my soul with God. And that includes the Holy Spirit and Jesus and any aspect of them. His heart, His mind, His physical body on earth, His death and resurrection, His being with us in union all the time now. So I'm trying to think, I was thinking, what would Jesus want of me for this novena? And what came to mind for me is not a set prayer, not words, in other words, a set prayer or a theme of some sort, something that I'll do every day for 9 days starting today. And I think Jesus would like for me to be happier, be notice good things, not be down. He doesn't want me down. And I've been rather down. This fatigue is just overwhelming fatigue. And another thought came just a bit ago is that my pain meds that my pain doctor wants me on, and because he's worried that my intestines will stop working if he changes the pain meds back to morphine from Dilaudid. But the Dilaudid isn't really helping my pain that much, I can tell. Pain makes me very, very tired. It makes any of you tired. Any kind of pain, emotional, mental, or physical. And I have never been this fatigued where I'll be talking and I'll just stop. I'll just go off, like in a waking daze or dozing. Or I'll text, and like even when I was trying to write the intro for one of the videos I was doing yesterday, when I came to, I had just lines of gibberish letters. I had kept typing, but I was asleep and still trying to function. So I didn't do 2 of those videos. In the 3rd video, I think I started to doze off in it a few times. It just seemed to drag, and I'm apologizing for my presentations. But so I switched back. I'm trying a different pain med now. I just took it a few minutes ago to see if that will help get the nerve pain. This nerve pain is very wearing, to say the least. It's the leg one now is really flared up, and it's like a knife is just stuck in my leg all the time. And maybe with the pain doctor, maybe I go in, I try to have a good attitude always, and he must think that I can endure more than what I am actually enduring, able to endure. It's starting to have a great effect on my body and on my daily life. So I think that the Lord is part of my novena, would like to me, my prayer, my relationship, my loving relationship with Jesus and His Sacred Heart, is to feel better, to have a better outlook, because this is starting to get me down, this exhaustion, this level of fatigue. And so I'm thinking in terms of offering each day no matter what it is, more overt happiness and joy and wonderment. A wonderment and awe of Jesus and his Sacred Heart. And that can come in various ways. I thought, whatever I do, because I'm way behind, I'm behind the 8 ball with manual labor here. It's the start, getting close to the beginning of summer. The grass is growing, the flowers, I have flowers that I planted last year I need to tie strings around them because they're starting to flop. They're getting large and they need support. Some trees need staking. Things are needing help. And things need watering, extra watering. And I'm just behind doing things. And there's spray paint that needs to be done for an arbor that I have. I need to spray paint that so that it will not be rusty. And I think I'm going to have as this novena, this prayer of 9 days, 9 days in a row before the day of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on the 7th of June. For all these days leading up to it, starting today, including tonight, will be some aspect of holy goodness, of joy, of uplift. I used to repeat, I'm a happy, joyful, inside up, or no, I'm a happy, joyful, happy, inside out, joyful, Eucharistic Catholic. I used to repeat that when I would get lethargic or something. I'm an inside out, joyful, Eucharistic Catholic. And Christian, I added Christian in because, of course, I'm Christian. And, but inside out, joyful, I would repeat that. Trying to live that, to be more joyful, to express more delight in living, delight in suffering, knowing that I have no way out of the suffering. I don't really. I mentioned pain meds, and it doesn't really cut the pain much. It's very minimal. I'm grateful for it, very grateful. But each day I'm going to try to think of or be inspired, ask the Lord how He'd like me to celebrate in prayer, in loving relationship with His Sacred Heart for 9 days before the big celebration of Jesus' Sacred Heart. So some of it I think will have to do with doing some type of gardening, planting or pruning, weeding, edging out with my pitchfork, edging out and clearing some weeds out to make beds neater and tidier so that the weeds and grass don't take over the flowers and the little conifers that I have planted out there. Conifers are little evergreens. I found some miniature ones, very tiny little things. They'll get maybe a foot tall at most in their life, or in my lifetime anyway. But to really appreciate even something like that, some creation of Jesus, of God, and of love. I think part of it will be one of the days, or maybe a couple of the days, will be dedicated to noticing people who love. Noticing people just out and about if I go any place. And if I don't, if I'm too fatigued and not feeling well all next week, then I'll notice on maybe a film that I watch. I'll notice the relationships with people, even if they're characters in a performance, how they love and what they love and what love is in their life. It might be a family film and how the children are engaged in love with each other or with pets, or that could be another facet of my prayer, my loving, communicative prayer with Jesus for this 9 days of praying in preparation to celebrate Jesus' Sacred Heart. So, yes, something to do with love, something wonderful about love that I notice of people and of love of God's creation. These young men, I noticed they were out working in the common area. I thought, oh dear, one of my sprinklers may be broke. And I went out, and these two young men were out working in the mud, working on this sprinkler. And they said, no, it's not yours. It's for the common area, and we're working on fixing it. And they noticed a plant out there, heuchera, they're called, Heuchera, heuchera, pronounced with the H sound. And it's very unusual in coloring. Usually heuchera, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but they're mostly leaves. And they can be like chartreuse green, different shades of green with other light colors of green in them, or can be red colors, brick red, peach colored, these leaves that get new leaves all summer. And they are bright and brilliant, and or more dull. They're different shades. And I found one last year at this nursery here that their prices really are very good, and they have unusual plants. And this heuchera is sort of a golden color with blood red veins going out, and the leaves are heart-shaped. So that's usually heart-shaped, or they can also be sort of a partial circle that is sort of ruffled on the edges. So this young man, maybe he's 19 years old or something, out of high school, I think, but barely, and his partner, also very young, but this one young man had noticed. He says, "Oh, what's that?" He says, I love that there," because they've worked here for a couple of weeks now or so since the weather's gotten better. And he says, "Oh, and I love these flowers over here, but it's that plant there. What's that one? What's that one?" Of course, with my head injury and stuff, I couldn't immediately think of the name. And right at the end, as they were leaving to go do more work elsewhere, I thought of heuchera and spelled it out for them. But if I felt better, I'd like to get to this greenhouse, this place, and see if they have any of those this year of that color, and have it as a gift for him. Because how often do you find a young man interested in an old lady's plants? And he says, "Oh, I love your yard and all the plantings you have." And that was good, because some people don't, and that's okay. Some people like very orderly and more simple, just grass and a couple of trees, a couple of bushes or something. And mine is eclectic, I have to tell you. And I'll try to figure out how to do a video on my phone and take you on a little tour of my mess here. God bless this mess. But so that was interesting. But I thought of that. I thought, just to go out and take time to love the plants, rejoice in the plants and the variety and the blessing that I had, and thank my parents for leaving me and my sisters their money that we split then. And so otherwise I wouldn't be able to be buying flowers. And well, they're perennials I try to get, but I did buy petunias, annuals, and I just planted some old seeds of marigolds and zinnias. But and I hope some of them grow. But generally, I do perennials that will come up each year. You have some deaths now and then, but that could be something I could do that I think Jesus would like, to see me exuberating over his creation. and over the natural world. And so I could do that one day in specific. I could do things like this, choose a day, maybe write out a list of which day, or even leave it open-ended. Um, and maybe just take it day by day. Don't plan it out in advance of what Jesus might want me to do each day, or several things during. Make the whole days, all 9 days dedicated to a wonderment and joy of Jesus and his Sacred Heart, a wonderment and joy of his being a victim of love, a victim of suffering, but not get morbid about it. I think Jesus views me as a priest once did. It was the first priest who didn't, he got bothered by me very quickly. I guess it doesn't take much. But he held his stomach, gripped his stomach, and says, "Oh, you make me sick to my stomach. You make me want to pull my hair out." And at the time I told my godmother, this older nun, and she says, "Well, he doesn't have much hair," so she says he'd better be careful about how much he pulls out. We laughed, but it was sort of sad that a priest would get that upset with me. But I guess I am always thinking, I always had questions, I always had ideas, always wondering about this and that of the spiritual world and of Catholicism. I was just learning. And it wore thin on him. He was an older man, and some of the things I come up with were exasperating to him. Made him sick to his stomach just to see me. And one time he did tell me, he says, "Your eyes just going around," and he made this face, and "Oh, like this, and you're so sad." And so I thought, because I always want to please people, and I take criticism pretty well, I think. Sometimes I don't if I see that it is unfounded. But for the most part, I do try to see truth in people's criticism of me. Because usually there is some point, or also at least see that the person is irritated by me or disagrees with me out of some other reason. Some kind of dislike has developed, and it might not be the content that the person's really disagreeing with. It might just be my personality or something else. So, but I do try to pay attention when somebody. So I thought about it, and I thought, well, I was fairly new as a Catholic, and I thought it is somber. The crucifix every day, as a Protestant, I never saw Jesus's corpus, wounded and in agony, and his mouth agape in some of them of an agony, or as if he's calling out, "God, why have you forsaken me? Father, why have you forsaken me?" So I went through a very serious phase and very somber, and the Mass really affected me. It's beautiful, it's glorious, but it's also powerful in an awesome way. The reality of what Jesus went through, especially when we're in the scriptures going through his persecutions and then his crucifixion and death. But the lead up to all of that, Holy Week. In fact, I think we had just been through Holy Week and Easter, and I was still affected. But I thought, well, he's right. I have become rather serious. And then with my pain, too. I can't call myself a happy-looking person. And especially when I was younger, I didn't, when you're old, when you see an old woman here, looking at her right now, wrinkled and eyes are sort of sunken in, and but they're not bad like they are sometimes. But when I was younger, in my late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, and on, when I would be in worse pain, I would get extremely dark circles. My eyes would be like they'd sink in and they'd be very, very small and reddish, a lot of reddish around, red rimmed and dark bluish black under here. I'd get very pale otherwise, and and I have to consider what people see. So the priest would see that, and I would go to mass no matter what. I mean, when I'd have a pain siege, of course I couldn't go at all, but I would go if I could barely get myself there because I love the mass. And of anything in Catholicism and of my journey that's been the most difficult, it's been not going to mass. That was the hardest thing for me to bear, was when I realized that I shouldn't go to mass, that it was too disruptive to people, even though the mystical state, the ecstasy, just looked like I was asleep, but of course I wasn't moving. And after a while, that would alarm people, and I couldn't stand up during the gospel. I was in bliss. I wasn't really, you don't have any control over your body, your faculties to move or to even breathe much. You don't breathe, your heart rate's practically gone, and that's just how it is. And I wasn't supposed to talk about it to anyone or answer any questions, so different theories came up. People would notice, some would worry. But and then after, wouldn't be but long, even in a new parish, even if I'd talk to the priest ahead of time and ask him, is this going to be a problem for you? Oh, no. The last one said, oh, I Teresa of Avila had something like this happen, and I'm fine with it. And you're sort of curious, but fine. But no, it was within 2 months. He wasn't fine with it. He was starting his scrutiny of me, and he wasn't comfortable, and he was putting himself in occasion of sin, of being mean, and not wanting me there. I didn't wait for it to happen when he would tell me or say something to me. I thought, spare this, because he was a wonderful priest, but they can't help it because it's an unusual thing. None of the priests that I ever had contact with had ever experienced anyone having an ecstasy. And I don't know what they thought it would look like, but something other. It just didn't look like someone in a death slump, asleep. My head would go down and I wouldn't move. I couldn't move. So, and that was it. It's like I was deeply asleep or dead, slumped over dead. And not slumped dramatically or anything like that. I do have a book. I'll find it. It has artwork of different people in ecstasies through the ages. It's in Italian. I got it in Rome on that first pilgrimage for my mother, praying for my mother. And all I have are the artwork because I don't know Italian to read it, but I wish I did. But it just the artwork itself tells a story. So I'll show some of those pictures to you, those images, those artworks. But it was just one of those things, and I finally realized that every parish I'd been in since the ecstasy started, it caused trouble for people. They couldn't handle it. Either in bad ways they couldn't handle it, or innocently thinking and ignoring the little sign I'd wear. That this lawyer had suggested I wear a little sign. Please do not touch. Do not be concerned. He said, use the word meditating. Don't use the word ecstasy, because God forbid people would know what an ecstasy is. I guess there was this stigma about it, a real stigma. But anyway, that has been the most painful thing, is realizing that God was reminding me, two of the early desert fathers, they weren't in parishes. And they weren't in, if they had an ecstasy, it didn't cause any issues with people. And I still wonder about it. I still wonder if I should have kept toughing it out, but I was being injured and people were doing ugly things and acting ugly, sinful, nasty. And that isn't a good combination with being at Mass, to become a distraction to others, even though it shouldn't have been a distraction, because, especially I'm old now. This was just 3 years ago was when I realized, don't do this anymore. And it's been fine since. The Lord showed me that I do fine without being in a parish and without tangible host and tangible blood, his body and blood. He feeds me mystically. So all that's fine. And that's how he dealt with the desert hermits, fathers and mothers. They received his body and blood mystically, spiritually. And they were subsumed. The Mass itself, I was so subsumed in him at every Mass for 12 years or something, or longer, that I went. Yeah, since 2008 until 3 years ago, it'd be 2021 or 2020. I think it was around COVID. So this is into the 4th year that I haven't, for 3 full years though. So, but that's been the most painful thing. But I think Jesus would like for me in my novena to his Sacred Heart to ponder all the good and the joys. And you folks are reminding me of these things, like doing a novena to the Sacred Heart, and how excited I would get about the Sacred Heart Celebration Day. I think it's the Feast of the Sacred Heart, or Memorial. There's 3. There's the solemnities, there's memorials, and there's feast days. And I'll review what those are. I had looked it up at one point. It doesn't really matter. They're celebrations, all of them. But they're depth, intensity of the more solemn ones. Solemnities are the most solemn, the highest worship, or the highest celebration of depth and meaning, like Christmas and Easter. Those are solemnities, the greatest of the events in Christendom. So, and then most of the celebrations of saints are feast days, called feast days, where they would, and if you're in a religious order or whatever, you'd have a special meal on those days, a feast, celebrate. All of them are celebrations, though. And memorials are in memory of, where you're remembering the occasion. Once again, a celebration. Now, it might be somber, it might be deep, like Good Friday. That can be very, very intense, and Holy Thursday also. At least for me, Holy Week, this last few years, I have to back away from it. I have to stay more on the surface because it gets too intense. It's too hard. And that sounds weak on my part, and it is weakness. I cannot bear Christ's sufferings, going over them again. I can't. I have to focus on the Easter part. it gets too psychologically overbearing. And I think we need to know that about ourselves. We have to stay in balance spiritually. And that's why some people in a novena to the Sacred Heart of Jesus will say a word prayer that's dedicated to his heart and also aspects of his wounded heart, of his sacred heart that was wounded, and all the sorrows he experienced and probably still does. I have to say that when I sin, Jesus isn't happy about it. It causes him grief and suffering when I sin. Now, because he's alive now. He's alive, he's eternal. He's with us. He's in me and I'm in him. So yes, he knows. And he knows when I'm down, when I'm discouraged, when I'm in despair, when I'm hurting a whole lot. He knows it just like my dogs do. Especially little Mercy it gets very, very sensitive and sticks right with me when I'm not feeling well. Lovey becomes upset. That's why last week when I was having so much burning pain in that arm in the night, I had to get up and get to the other end of the house. I didn't want them to hear me with this strange weeping I was having from just automatic from pain. And so, I don't want to upset Jesus. I think Jesus, that's what came to me anyway in my novena for the Sacred Heart, is to awe and wonder and joy and delight, and to revisit, refresh all aspects of Christ. And I think I'm going to go back 29 years and revisit that excitement of the great treasure chest of the church. And all the new, everything was so new and fresh and celebratory, even the somber things. And when that priest did tell me and showed me how I looked, how horrible, I looked horrible. And so I started smiling more. And that was good, even going up in the communion line. Because he said, I give you the communion. But of course, everyone else is very solemn. But I started smiling, full-blown smiles. And I realized, what does Jesus see from the tabernacle? When he's in the tabernacle and looking out at us, he's seeing me all sad and somber. So I started before Mass going in and smiling, looking at the tabernacle. So Jesus would see something other than sorrow and gloom. And the face that the priest made was a horrible face. But I thought I probably did look something like that. He wouldn't have mentioned it if I didn't. If I was looking too sad, too much in pain, too much seriousness. So I did that for quite a while, just to experience for Jesus, thinking what he sees back. What does he, and I looked around at me, and everybody was very serious and somber. And I thought, wow, let's give Jesus a break, an uplift, and look back with a smile and some joy. Happy to be there, grateful that he sacrificed his life for us. And I didn't do it disruptively. I doubt anyone noticed because everyone's looking forward, looking at the tabernacle or heads bowed in prayer with eyes closed. So I had that experience, and it was good to think about, what does Jesus see? And I'm doing that now. I'm going to do that with the novena. What's Jesus experiencing? He's in me. He remains in me. His love is in me. I'm in him. What's it like for him to be in me? when I'm in pain or when I'm discouraged or fatigued and sort of concerned. When's this going to stop so that I can keep up with some obligations? I'm not heartless about the neighbors and the HOA people that they don't want to have the neighbor place a mess and their yard not cleaned up or watering isn't done or whatever. So, going to do a novena for Jesus, for the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So today I've sort of thought through how I can be for Jesus and for his Sacred Heart. And tonight I'll do something loving, celebrative, and joyous. Give Jesus some upbeat and positive, inside out joyful. That's what I'll do, is offer that. And as a victim soul, do the love and the prayer of thought and feeling and action, awe and wonder, upbeat, positive, inside out, joyful, with Jesus in me, and have allowed Jesus to experience and me to experience Jesus in his joy and love each day. And each day there will be some different focus, whatever it is that Jesus brings to mind for me to do. So that's an example of a novena. It's not a traditional one, and you can do the traditional one. That's good, that's fine. You can read scripture every day. You can do, as part of the prayer, you can do set prayers. You can find a variety of prayers, religious prayers, prayers that are old prayers from early centuries that are beautiful prayers, verbal ones. I might do some of those every day too, in addition to other aspects of awe and wonder and joy and inside out joyful. So, Sacred Heart of Jesus coming up June 7th, and join me and our friend, one of the viewers, who reminded me of the novena for the Sacred Heart, 9 days. So let's see what we come up with. Also, as victim souls, many of us have made offerings or renewed offerings as victim souls. And we'll discuss victim as we go along, discuss it more. That it doesn't mean something somber and awful and sad. That's why I'm doing this novena of joy, of Jesus' Sacred Heart. God bless his real presence in us. And prayer novena with words or whatever, it will be an adventure for us. We'll all be in it together in different ways of how we're going to celebrate Jesus' Sacred Heart. Have a good evening, and God bless you all.